Lyra woke to the pale light of dawn slipping through the cracks in her shutters. For a moment, she lay still, hoping the heaviness in her chest was only a dream. But the silence of her small cottage felt too real. The air smelled faintly of pine and wood smoke. Her heart beat steady and slow. She remembered the ceremony, the torches, the hundreds of eyes watching her. She remembered saying no. The Alpha King had stood before her in the center of the gathering circle, his hand extended, his dark eyes holding hers with a quiet intensity that made her breath catch. The entire pack had waited. The elders, the families, even the children had gone still, and she had stepped back. She had refused him. Lyra closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Her throat felt tight. She had never seen anyone refuse an alpha, not in her lifetime, not in any of the stories her mother used to tell. But she had done it. She had walked away from Kalin in front of everyone, her voice barely a whisper, but her choice unmistakable. Now the morning felt too quiet, too empty. She pushed herself upright and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floorboards were cool beneath her bare feet. She rubbed her face with both hands, trying to shake the weight of the night before. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She needed water. She needed to move. But when she lowered her hands, something caught her eye. A faint glow. Lyra froze. She turned her left wrist slowly, bringing it into the dim light. Her breath stopped. There, on the soft skin of her inner wrist, was a mark. Silver, luminous, shaped like a crescent moon, delicate and unmistakable. It shimmered gently, as if it carried its own light, even in the shadows of her room. She stared at it, her pulse quickening. No, this wasn't possible. She touched the mark with trembling fingers. It was warm, real. The surface of her skin felt no different, but the glow remained, soft and persistent. She rubbed at it carefully, then harder, but it didn't fade. It didn't smudge. It simply was. Lyra's chest tightened. She knew what this was. Every wolf knew. The soul bond mark. The sign that the moon goddess herself had chosen a mate. It appeared only when the bond had been recognized. Accepted. But she hadn't accepted anything. She had refused him. She pulled her wrist close to her chest, her mind racing. The mark shouldn't be here. She had walked away. She had said no in front of the entire pack. She had made her choice. So why was this on her skin? Lyra rose quickly and crossed to the small basin by the window. She poured water from the pitcher and scrubbed at her wrist again, the cold biting against her skin. The mark remained. Glowing, steady, beautiful and terrifying all at once. She sank onto the edge of her bed, her hands shaking. The ceremony had been only hours ago. She had returned to her cottage alone, ignoring the whispers that followed her through the trees. She had bolted the door and crawled into bed, exhausted and aching, and told herself she had done the right thing. But now this. Lyra pressed her palm over the mark, trying to smother the light. It glowed softly between her fingers. She closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. She had rejected Kalin because she couldn't bear the thought of losing herself. She had watched her mother fade after her father died, the bond between them so strong that his death had unraveled her completely. Lyra had been young, but she remembered. The silence. The hollow look in her mother's eyes. The way she had simply stopped living, even though her heart still beat. Lyra had sworn she would never let that happen to her. She had built a life here in the forest, small but hers. She gathered herbs. She tended her garden. She lived quietly and carefully, far enough from the pack center to feel free. She had friends, but she kept her heart guarded. She had seen what love could cost. And then Kalin had called her name at the ceremony. She hadn't expected it. No one had. He was the Alpha King. Strong, respected, powerful. He could have chosen anyone. There were she-wolves who had waited years for his attention. But he had looked at her. He had said her name like it mattered. And she had felt something shift inside her, something she didn't want to name. So she had said no. She had refused the bond before it could take root. She had walked away before the moon goddess could weave their fates together. But the mark said otherwise. Lyra opened her eyes and looked down at her wrist again. The crescent moon glowed softly, steady, and undeniable. She felt a strange pull in her chest, a warmth that spread slowly through her ribs. It wasn't painful. It wasn't even unpleasant. But it was there. Unmistakable. A tether she hadn't asked for. She stood and moved to the window, pushing the shutters open. The morning air was cool and fresh. The forest stretched out before her, green and familiar. Birds called to one another in the branches. The world looked the same as it always had. But everything felt different now. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself and stared out at the trees. She thought of Kalin standing alone in the circle after she had walked away. She thought of the silence that had followed, the shock, the whispers that must have begun the moment she disappeared into the woods. What would he think when he saw the mark? Did he have one too? Her stomach twisted. She didn't know how this worked. The stories always said the bond required acceptance, mutual recognition. But she had refused him. She had been clear. So why did the moon goddess mark her anyway? Lyra pressed her forehead against the window frame and closed her eyes. She wanted to feel anger, frustration, but all she felt was confusion. And beneath that, something quieter, something that felt almost like longing. She had seen the way Kalin looked at her, not with possession, not with arrogance, but with something softer, something that made her heart ache even as she turned away. She had thought refusing him would be the end of it, but the mark on her wrist said this was only the beginning. Lyra pulled her sleeve down carefully, covering the glow. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know if she could hide this. She didn't know if she even wanted to. But she knew one thing. Kalin would come looking for answers, and she wasn't sure she had any to give. She stood at the window for a long time, watching the light grow stronger through the trees, feeling the warmth of the mark against her skin, and wondering what it meant to be chosen by someone you were too afraid to choose back. The forest was quiet. The morning stretched on. And Lyra waited, her heart full of questions she didn't yet know how to ask. Lyra stayed inside for most of the morning. She moved through her small cottage with quiet purpose, trying to ground herself in routine. She made tea, she swept the floor, she straightened the blankets on her bed. Small tasks that usually brought her comfort, but today they felt hollow. Her mind kept circling back to the mark. She rolled up her sleeve twice more, just to look at it. Each time, the crescent moon glowed faintly beneath her skin, silver and luminous. It didn't hurt. It didn't fade. It simply existed, as undeniable as her own heartbeat. Lyra tried to remember everything she had been told about soul bonds. The stories passed down through generations. The warnings her mother had whispered late at night. Most of what she knew came wrapped in tragedy. mates who couldn't live without each other, wolves who faded when their bond was severed, love that became a prison. Her mother had been one of them. Alara set her cup down carefully, her hands trembling. She hadn't let herself think about her mother in a long time. The memories were too sharp, too painful. But now they rose up like a tide she couldn't hold back. Her mother had been gentle, kind, full of laughter once. But after her mate died, something inside her had broken. She had faded slowly, day by day, until there was almost nothing left. Alara had been young, but she remembered. She remembered watching her mother stare out the window for hours. She remembered the silence, the emptiness. She remembered promising herself she would never let that happen to her. That was why she had said no to Kalin. Not because she didn't see the kindness in his eyes, not because she didn't feel the pull when he stood before her, but because she was terrified of losing herself the way her mother had, terrified of becoming so bound to someone that her own life stopped mattering. Alara pulled her sleeve down again and pressed her palm against the fabric. The mark pulsed softly beneath her touch, warm and steady. It felt almost alive, almost like it was trying to tell her something. She stood and moved to the door, stepping outside into the cool air. The sun was higher now, filtering through the trees in golden streaks. Her cottage sat at the edge of the woods, far enough from the heart of the pack that she could breathe. She had chosen this place for the solitude, for the freedom. But freedom felt different now. Alara walked slowly along the path that led toward the main village. She didn't plan to go all the way. She just needed to move, to think. But as she rounded the bend near the old oak tree, she saw two women standing near the well. They were talking in low voices, their heads close together. Lyra slowed. She wasn't close enough to hear clearly, but she caught fragments, words that drifted toward her on the breeze. Can't believe she refused him. What was she thinking? The Alpha King of all people. Alara stopped walking. Her chest tightened. She had known there would be talk. She had expected it. But hearing it out loud was different. It made everything feel more real, more permanent. One of the women glanced up and saw her. Her eyes widened. She nudged her companion, and both of them fell silent. They stared at Alara for a moment, their expressions caught somewhere between shock and curiosity. Alara lifted her chin and kept walking. She didn't owe them an explanation. She didn't owe anyone anything. But her heart pounded harder with every step, and she felt the weight of their eyes on her back long after she passed. She turned off the path before she reached the village center, slipping back into the trees. The forest welcomed her with quiet shadows and the soft rustle of leaves. She walked until she found a familiar clearing, a place she used to come to as a child. A fallen log sat near the center, covered in moss. She sat down and let out a slow breath. The whispers would only get worse. She knew that. The pack didn't understand why she had refused Kalin. Most of them probably thought she was foolish, ungrateful, maybe even dangerous. A wolf who rejected the bond was a wolf who defied the moon goddess herself. But they didn't know what it felt like to watch someone you love disappear because of a bond they couldn't survive without. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself and stared up at the canopy above. Sunlight flickered through the leaves, painting patterns on the ground. She thought about Kalin again, about the way he had stood so still when she spoke her refusal. He hadn't tried to stop her. He hadn't demanded an explanation. He had simply let her go. That surprised her. She had expected anger, maybe even cruelty. Alphas were taught to command, to claim, to protect what was theirs. But Kalin had done none of those things. He had looked at her with something that felt almost like sorrow. And then he had stepped back. She touched her wrist again through the fabric of her sleeve. The warmth of the mark pulsed faintly, a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. It felt like a question she didn't know how to answer. What did it mean that the bond had formed anyway? What did it mean that the moon goddess had marked her even after she said no? Lyra didn't believe in fate. She didn't believe that someone else should decide who she belonged to. But she couldn't ignore the pull in her chest. The quiet ache that had settled there since the moment Kalin spoke her name in the circle. She closed her eyes and let herself remember his voice. Deep and steady. Not loud. Not commanding. Just certain. Like he had been waiting his whole life to say her name. Her throat tightened. She didn't want to feel this. She didn't want to wonder what might have happened if she had said yes. If she had been braver. If she hadn't been so afraid. But she was afraid, and she didn't know how to stop being afraid. Lyra sat in the clearing for a long time, letting the forest hold her in its quiet embrace. Birds called overhead. A breeze stirred the leaves. The world moved on, indifferent to her confusion. Eventually, she stood and brushed the moss from her skirt. She couldn't hide forever. She couldn't avoid the whispers or the questions or the inevitable moment when Kalin would come looking for her. Because he would. She was sure of that now. The bond had formed. And whether she wanted it or not, they were tied together. The mark on her wrist was proof of that. Lyra walked back toward her cottage slowly, her mind still heavy with questions. She didn't know what she would say to him. She didn't know if she could explain the fear that lived so deep inside her it felt like part of her bones. But she knew she couldn't run from this. Not really. The forest path opened up ahead, and her cottage came into view. It looked small and safe, tucked beneath the trees. For a moment, she let herself imagine staying there, locking the door, pretending the mark didn't exist. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she felt the pull in her chest again. Warmer now. Stronger. Lyra stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She leaned against it and let out a long breath. Somewhere out there, Kalin was waiting, and she had a feeling that soon, very soon, he would stop waiting and come to find her. She wasn't ready. But maybe she never would be. He came the next morning. Lyra heard his footsteps before she saw him, soft against the earth, deliberate. She was kneeling in the garden behind her cottage, dirt under her fingernails, when the air shifted. She didn't need to turn around to know it was him. The bond hummed beneath her skin, a low vibration that spread from her wrist to her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment and tried to steady her breathing. When she finally looked up, Kalin stood at the edge of the garden, alone. No guards, no entourage, just him. He wore simple clothing, a dark tunic and worn boots. His hands were empty at his sides. He didn't look like a king. He looked like a man who had walked a long way and didn't know if he would be welcomed at the end of it. Lyra rose slowly, brushing the dirt from her hands. Her heart was beating too fast. She hated that he could probably hear it. "I didn't come to command you," Kalin said quietly. His voice was steady, but there was something raw beneath it. "I came to ask," she swallowed. "Ask what? Why you refused me?" The question hung in the air between them, soft, honest. Not angry, not wounded, just wondering. Lyra looked down at her hands, at the soil still clinging to her skin. She didn't know how to answer him. She didn't know if she even could. "I didn't refuse you," she said finally. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "I refused what you represent." Kalin took a step closer. Not into the garden. Just near enough that she could see his face more clearly. His expression was open. Vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. "And what do I represent?" he asked. She met his eyes. They were dark, warm, not the eyes of a king looking down at a subject. Just a man, waiting. "A life where I disappear," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. "A life where I stop being Lyra and become yours." He flinched. Just barely. But she saw it. "I would never ask that of you," he said softly. "You wouldn't have to." Her throat tightened. "It's what happens. It's what the bond does. I've seen it. I lived it." Kalin was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped into the garden. Slowly. Carefully. Like he was afraid of startling her. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Close enough that the bond hummed louder between them. "Tell me," he said gently. "Tell me what you've seen." Lyra looked away. Her chest ached. She hadn't spoken about this. Not to anyone. Not in years. "My mother," she whispered. "She was bonded to my father. A strong bond. Everyone said they were lucky. That the goddess had blessed them." Kalin didn't speak. He just waited. "When he died," Lyra continued, her voice breaking slightly, "she faded. Every day, a little more. She stopped eating, stopped speaking. It was like she couldn't exist without him. And I watched her disappear." Her hands trembled. She clenched them into fists to stop the shaking. "I won't let that happen to me," she said. "I won't let someone else become the reason I breathe. I can't." The silence that followed felt heavy. Not uncomfortable, just full. When Kalin finally spoke, his voice was so soft she almost didn't hear it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know." She looked up at him. His face was open. Grief lived there. Not for himself. For her. "I don't want your pity," she said quietly. "It's not pity." He took a breath. "It's understanding." Alara's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. Kalin looked down at his hands. Then back at her. "I didn't ask for this either," he said. "The bond. The mark. I didn't choose it any more than you did." She blinked. "Then why did you call me forward?" "Because the goddess chose you." His voice was steady, honest. "And I hoped." "Hoped for what?" He hesitated. For the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. "That you saw me," he said quietly. "Not the king. Not the alpha. Just me." The words landed softly between them. Lyra felt something shift in her chest. The bond pulsed once. Gentle, not demanding. "I don't know you," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I know." Kalin's gaze didn't waver. "But I want you to, if you'll let me." She looked at him. Really looked. At the way he stood. The way he held himself. Not towering over her. Not using his presence to intimidate. Just waiting. Hoping. "I've been alone a long time," he said. His voice was low, almost fragile. "I've had people around me my entire life. Advisors, guards, pack members. But I've been alone." Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. "I thought..." He paused. "When the goddess showed me your face, I thought maybe I wouldn't be anymore." The honesty in his words cut through her. She didn't know how to respond. "And then you said no," Kalin continued, "and I realized I'd already started hoping. and that hurt more than I expected. Her breath caught. She hadn't thought about his side of it, his loss, his disappointment. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be." He shook his head. "You had every right to refuse. You have every right to choose your own life." "Then why are you here?" she asked. Kalin looked at her for a long moment. The bond hummed between them. Warm, steady. "Because I wanted you to know that I won't force this," he said quietly. "I won't use the bond to bind you. I won't command you or demand anything from you." Alara's eyes stung. She blinked hard. "But I'm asking," he continued, "for time, for a chance to show you that I see you, that I hear you, that I would never ask you to disappear." She looked down at the mark on her wrist. It glowed faintly in the morning light. She had tried so hard to hide it, to ignore it. But it was there. And so was he. "I don't know if I can do this," she said. Her voice trembled. "I'm not asking you to decide now." Kalin's tone was gentle. "I'm just asking you not to run." She looked up at him. His eyes were steady, warm, full of something she didn't have a name for yet. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I know." He took a slow breath. "So am I." The confession surprised her. She had expected him to be certain, confident. But he looked just as uncertain as she felt. "What if I can't be what you need?" she whispered. "What if you already are?" He said softly. The words settled between them. Quiet. True. Lyra felt the pull in her chest again. Not demanding, not overwhelming, just there. A quiet invitation. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know if she was ready. But for the first time, she didn't feel like running. Kalin stepped back slowly, giving her space, letting her breathe. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said, "if you'll let me." She nodded. Just once. It was all she could manage. He held her gaze for another moment. Then he turned and walked back toward the forest. His footsteps soft against the earth. Steady. Patient. Lyra stood in the garden long after he disappeared from view. Her hands still trembled, her heart still raced, but something had shifted. She looked down at the mark on her wrist. It glowed softly in the morning light, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a question, and maybe she was ready to start looking for the answer. The next morning, Lyra woke with the mark burning softly on her wrist. Not painful, just warm, insistent. She pressed her fingers against it and felt the hum beneath her skin. It had been there for 3 days now, growing brighter each night, pulling at something deep inside her chest. She sat up slowly and looked out the window. The sun was just beginning to rise. Pale gold light filtered through the trees, and standing at the edge of her garden, waiting quietly, was Kalin. He didn't knock, didn't call out. He just stood there with his hands at his sides, patient. Lyra took a slow breath. Her heart beat unevenly in her chest. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside. The grass was cool and damp beneath her feet. The air smelled of pine and morning dew. Kalin turned when he heard her. His eyes found hers immediately. "You came back," she said softly. "I told you I would." She nodded. Her throat felt tight. They stood in silence for a moment. The world felt still around them. Finally, Lyra held up her wrist. The mark glowed faintly in the early light. "I need to understand this," she said. Her voice was steady but quiet. I need to know what's happening to me. Kalin's expression shifted. Something like regret flickered in his eyes. May I come closer? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He walked toward her slowly, stopped a few feet away, close enough to speak softly, far enough to give her space. The mark, he said gently. It's called a soul bond. Alara's breath caught. A soul bond? It's ancient, Kalin continued. Older than the packs. Older than any of us. She wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't choose it. I know. His voice was full of quiet sorrow. Neither of us did. Then why is it here? Her voice broke slightly. Why now? Kalin looked down at his own wrist. He pulled back his sleeve slowly. And there, glowing softly against his skin, was the same crescent mark. Lyra stared. Her heart hammered in her chest. It appeared the night you rejected me, he said quietly. I didn't understand it at first either. She took a shaky breath. What does it mean? It means our souls recognized each other. His tone was careful, honest. Even when we didn't choose it, even when you said no, I don't want to be bound to something I didn't ask for. Her voice trembled. I know. Kalin met her eyes. And I won't let it become a cage. How can you promise that? She whispered. If the bond is already there, if it's already pulling at me. Because the bond doesn't control us, he said firmly. It connects us. But it doesn't take away your choice. Lyra shook her head slowly. Tears stung her eyes. That's not what I've heard. That's not what my mother... She stopped. Her throat closed. Kalin's expression softened. Tell me, he said gently. She looked away. The memories pressed against her chest. Heavy. Painful. My mother had a bond, she said quietly, with my father. And when he died, she couldn't survive it. Kalin didn't speak. He just waited. She faded. Lyra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Every day, a little more, until there was nothing left of her. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. I watched her disappear, she said, and I swore I would never let that happen to me. Kalin's eyes were full of something deep and aching. I'm sorry, he said softly. I don't want to lose myself. Her voice broke. I don't want to become someone who can't exist without you. You won't. His tone was steady, certain. I promise you won't. How can you know that? She asked desperately. Because I won't let it happen. Kalin took a careful step closer. Lyra, the bond isn't meant to consume you. It's meant to connect us, to help us understand each other. She looked up at him, her vision blurred with tears. But it's stronger than I am, she whispered. I can feel it pulling at me, every time you're near, every time I try to ignore it. I feel it too. His voice was low, raw. But it doesn't control me, and it doesn't have to control you. Then what am I supposed to do with it? She asked. How do I live with something I never asked for? Kalin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle. You don't have to accept it, he said. Not yet. Not until you're ready. Lyra stared at him. What? The bond is there, he said. But it doesn't have to be everything. Not right now. I don't understand. I'm asking you to let me prove something to you. His eyes held hers. Let me show you that this bond doesn't have to mean losing yourself. Let me show you that I see you as more than just my mate. Her breath hitched. How? By giving you time, he said simply. By letting you choose. Every day. Every moment. Lyra felt something shift in her chest. Small. Fragile. You're not going to force me? Never. The word was absolute. She looked down at the mark on her wrist. It glowed softly in the morning light. What if I can't ever accept it? She asked quietly. Kalin's expression didn't change. Then I'll respect that, he said. Even if it breaks me. The honesty in his voice made her throat tighten. I don't want to hurt you, she whispered. I know. He gave her a sad, soft smile. But I'd rather have your honesty than your fear. Lyra felt tears slip down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. I'm so afraid, she admitted. So am I. His voice was barely a whisper. She looked up at him. His eyes were steady, open, full of something she didn't know how to name. What are you afraid of? She asked. That I'll fail you, he said quietly. That I won't be enough. That you'll look at me and only see the crown. The confession made her chest ache. I don't want to be just a king to you, he continued. I want to be someone you trust, someone you choose. Lyra's breath shook. I don't know if I can. Then let me earn it. His tone was soft but sure. One day at a time. She looked down at her wrist again. The mark pulsed gently beneath her skin. It terrified her. But it also felt warm. Not suffocating, not demanding, just there, like a quiet invitation. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. Neither do I. Kalin's voice was steady. But maybe we can figure it out together. She met his eyes, searched them for any sign of deception, any hint of control. But all she saw was honesty, patience, hope. Okay, she said softly. Kalin's breath caught. Okay, I'll let you try. Her voice trembled. But I need you to understand something. Anything. If I ever feel like I'm disappearing, she said, if I ever feel like the bond is taking more than I can give, I need to be able to walk away. Kalin nodded slowly. You will always have that choice, he said. I swear it. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she took a slow, shaky breath. I don't trust this yet, she admitted. But I think I might be able to trust you. Kalin's expression softened. Relief flickered across his face. That's enough, he said quietly. That's more than enough. Lyra felt the pull in her chest again. Warm. Gentle. She didn't fight it this time, she just let it settle. Will you come back tomorrow? She asked. If you want me to. She nodded. Just once. Kalin held her gaze for another heartbeat. Then he stepped back slowly. Thank you, he said softly. And then he turned and walked back toward the trees. Lyra stood in the garden and watched him go. The mark on her wrist glowed softly in the morning light. And for the first time, she didn't feel trapped by it. She felt curious, maybe even hopeful. Kalin returned the next morning just as the mist was lifting from the valley. Lyra heard his footsteps on the gravel path before she saw him. She was kneeling in the herb garden, her hands dark with soil, when he came around the side of the cottage. He wore no crown, no formal cloak, just simple clothes, and a quiet expression that made him look more like a traveler than a king. Good morning, he said. She looked up at him, shielding her eyes from the early sun. You came back. You asked me to. She nodded slowly and rose to her feet, brushing the dirt from her hands. "I wasn't sure you would." "I keep my promises," he said gently. Lyra studied him for a moment. Then she gestured toward the back of the cottage. "The fence is broken," she said. "I've been meaning to fix it for weeks." Kalin followed her gaze. The wooden fence leaned at an awkward angle. 2 posts rotted through at the base. "I can help," he said. She blinked. "You want to fix my fence?" "If you'll let me." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and led him to the shed where she kept her tools. He took the hammer and nails without hesitation, without expectation, and for the next hour they worked side by side in comfortable silence. Lyra watched him from the corner of her eye as he pulled the old posts free and set new ones in their place. His movements were careful, steady. He didn't rush or demand direction. He simply worked. When she handed him a plank, he took it with a quiet thank you. When she pointed out a crooked angle, he adjusted it without protest. It felt strange, not wrong, just unexpected. "You're good at this," she said after a while. Kalin glanced up at her. A faint smile touched his mouth. "I wasn't always a king," he said. "I grew up working with my hands." "I didn't know that. Most people don't." She tilted her head. "Why not?" He shrugged. "It's easier to see the crown than the man beneath it." Lyra looked down at the mark on her wrist. It pulsed softly beneath the thin sleeve of her tunic. "I'm starting to see him," she said quietly. Kalin's hands stilled. He met her eyes. Something warm flickered in his gaze. "Good," he said softly. They finished the fence just before midday. Kalin stepped back to inspect the work, brushing sawdust from his hands. "That should hold," he said. Lyra tested the post with her palm. They were solid, strong. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "Any time." She hesitated. Then she turned toward the cottage. "Would you like some tea?" Kalin's expression softened. "I'd like that." They sat on the porch steps together, mugs warm in their hands. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees. Birds called softly from the branches above. Lyra sipped her tea and watched the way the light fell across Kalin's profile. He looked peaceful here, unburdened. "Do you always work this hard?" she asked. He glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "You're a king," she said. "You could have sent someone else to fix my fence." "I could have," he agreed. "But I wanted to be here." "Why?" He looked down at his tea. "Because I want you to know me," he said. "Not the title, not the role, just me." Lyra's chest tightened. "I think I'm starting to." Kalin's mouth curved into a small, genuine smile. "Then I'm doing something right." She laughed softly. The sound surprised her. It felt good. Light. "Maybe you are." They sat in silence for a while longer. Lyra noticed the way he held his mug with both hands, the way his shoulders relaxed when he wasn't surrounded by watchful eyes, the way he looked at her without expectation, without demand. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "What do you do when you're not being a king?" Kalin thought for a moment. "I walk," he said, "in the forest, alone. It's the only time I feel like myself." "That sounds lonely." "It is," he admitted. "But it's also the only place where no one needs anything from me." Lyra's heart ached at the honesty in his voice. "You don't have to be alone here," she said quietly. He looked at her, really looked at her. "I don't feel alone when I'm with you." The words settled between them, warm and true. Lyra felt the bond hum softly in her chest. She didn't fight it. She just let it be. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. "Do you want me to?" She nodded. "I do." Kalin's expression softened. Relief flickered in his eyes. "Then I will." The days blurred together after that. Kalin came each morning. Sometimes he brought firewood. Sometimes he helped her gather herbs from the hillside. Once, he spent an entire afternoon repairing the leak in her roof while she passed him tools, and laughed at his dry commentary about the stubbornness of old shingles. He never asked for anything in return, never demanded her time or attention. He simply showed up, steady, present, and slowly, Lyra began to let her guard down. She learned that he liked his tea strong and slightly bitter, that he had a scar on his left forearm from a childhood accident, that he hummed softly when he worked, a low, tuneless sound that made her smile. She learned that he listened more than he spoke, that he noticed small things, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her voice softened when she talked about her garden. And in return, she let him see her, the parts of herself she usually kept hidden, her uncertainty, her grief, her quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to trust this. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the clearing, Lyra found herself standing beside him at the edge of the forest. They'd spent the afternoon gathering wild mushrooms, and now they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. "Thank you," she said softly. Kalin looked at her. "For what?" "For being patient with me," she said, "for not pushing." "You're worth the wait," he said simply. Her throat tightened. She looked down at the mark on her wrist. It glowed softly in the twilight. "I'm not as afraid as I was," she admitted. Kalin's voice was gentle. "What changed?" "You did," she said. "Or maybe I did. I don't know." She paused. "But when I look at you now, I don't just see the king anymore." "What do you see?" She met his eyes. "Someone I think I could trust." Kalin's breath caught. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed his fingers against hers. Just a light touch. A question. Lyra's heart raced. But she didn't step back. Instead, she let her fingers curl gently around his. The bond pulsed warmly between them, not demanding, just present. A quiet certainty that wrapped around her ribs and settled into something that felt almost like peace. "I'm still scared," she whispered. "So am I," Kalin said softly. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, she believed him. "Then maybe we can be scared together," she said. Kalin's smile was small but real. "I'd like that." They stood there as the stars began to appear overhead, hand in hand. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them was warm, safe. And Lyra realized, with a strange flutter in her chest, that she didn't want him to leave. Not yet. The next morning, Lyra woke with Kalin's words still echoing in her mind. "Maybe we can be scared together." The thought settled somewhere deep in her chest, warm and unfamiliar. She dressed slowly, her fingers brushing over the mark on her wrist. It pulsed gently, as if responding to her thoughts. She expected him to arrive mid-morning, as he had the past few days. But when she stepped outside, he was already there, sitting on the low stone wall that bordered her garden. His head was tipped back, eyes closed, face turned toward the early sun. He looked peaceful, almost vulnerable. Lyra's breath caught. She'd never seen him like this, unguarded, just a man resting in the quiet of dawn. "You're early," she said softly. Kalin opened his eyes and turned to her. His smile was small, a little tired, couldn't sleep. "Bad dreams?" she asked, moving closer. "No," he said, "just thinking." She sat beside him on the wall. The stone was cool beneath her. "About what?" Kalin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "About why I wanted this bond so badly. Before I even knew it was you." Lyra waited. She didn't push. "I thought it would make things easier," he admitted. "Having a mate, someone to stand beside me, someone who understood." He paused. "But I think I was just tired of being alone." Her chest tightened. "You have your whole pack." "I do," he said. "But it's not the same. They see the king. Always the king." His voice softened. "I wanted someone to see me." Lyra looked down at her hands. "I'm not sure I'm good at that either." "You're better than you think," Kalin said gently. She swallowed. The words she'd been holding back for days pressed against her ribs. Heavy. Urgent. She'd promised herself she wouldn't hide anymore. Not from him. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. Kalin turned to face her fully. "I'm listening." Lyra took a slow breath. The morning air was cool and clean. Birds sang in the trees behind them. Everything felt too ordinary for the weight of what she was about to say. "My mother didn't just fade after my father died," she began. Her voice was steady, but barely. "She gave up. Completely." Kalin didn't speak. He just watched her, his expression open and calm. "She stopped eating," Lyra continued. "Stopped going outside. She'd sit by the window for hours, staring at nothing." Her throat tightened. "I was 12. I didn't know how to help her." "Lyra," Kalin said softly. "She told me once that losing him was like losing half her soul." Lyra whispered. "That she couldn't feel whole without him. That the bond made it impossible to keep living." She felt the sting of tears but blinked them back. She'd cried enough over this. She didn't want to cry now. "I watched her disappear," she said, "day by day, until there was nothing left." She looked at Kalin. "And I swore I'd never let that happen to me." Kalin's jaw tightened, not in anger, in something deeper. "Is that why you rejected me?" "Yes," she said. "I was terrified of the bond, of losing myself, of becoming her." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out slowly and took her hand. His touch was warm, steady. "I can't promise you'll never lose me," he said. "I can't promise I'll live forever, or that nothing will ever hurt us." Lyra's breath hitched. "But I can promise you this," Kalin continued. "I will never ask you to lose yourself for me. Not ever." Her eyes burned. "How can you be sure?" "Because I don't want half a person," he said simply. "I want you, all of you, your strength, your fear, your independence." He paused. "I don't need you to fade into my shadow, Lyra. I need you to stand in your own light." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Kalin lifted his free hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed the tear away with his thumb. "Your mother's story isn't yours," he said gently. "You're not her. And I'm not your father. But the bond is what we make it," Kalin said. "It doesn't have to be a chain. It can be a choice." Lyra stared at him. Her heart was pounding. "You really believe that?" "I do," he said. And I'll prove it to you. Every day. For as long as it takes. She let out a shaky breath. The weight in her chest didn't disappear completely. But it shifted. Loosened just a little. I'm still afraid, she whispered. I know, Kalin said, and that's okay. She looked at their joined hands. The mark on her wrist glowed faintly. She'd spent so long seeing it as a trap. A sentence. But sitting here with him, listening to the quiet certainty in his voice, maybe it didn't have to be. I have fears too, Kalin said quietly. Lyra looked up. You do? He nodded. His expression was serious now. Vulnerable. I'm afraid I'll fail you, that I won't be enough, that you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Her breath caught. Kalin, I've been king for 8 years, he said, and I've made so many decisions, led my pack through war, through famine, through loss. He paused. But none of that scares me as much as the thought of losing you. Lyra's throat tightened. Why? Because you're the first person in a long time who's made me feel like I'm more than just a title, he said. You see me, Lyra, really see me, and that's... He trailed off. That's everything. She didn't know what to say. Her heart felt too full, too raw. I don't want to possess you, Kalin continued. I don't want to control you. I just want to be beside you, to build something together. He met her eyes. A partnership? Not a hierarchy. Lyra felt something crack open inside her, something she'd kept locked away for years. The part of her that wanted to believe, to hope, to trust. You really mean that, she whispered. I do, he said. She looked at him, at the honesty in his eyes, the quiet strength in the way he held her hand, and she realized that she believed him. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to let someone in. Neither do I, Kalin said softly. But maybe we can learn together. Lyra's lips trembled. She nodded slowly. Okay. Kalin's expression softened. Relief flickered across his face. Hope. They sat there in silence for a while. The sun climbed higher. The world woke around them. But neither of them moved. Eventually, Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. Just a small shift. A tentative gesture. Kalin went still. Then, carefully, he wrapped his arm around her. She closed her eyes. His warmth seeped into her. Steady. Safe. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For listening, she said. For not running when I told you the truth. Kalin's voice was low and gentle. I'm not going anywhere. Lyra felt the bond hum softly between them. It didn't feel like a chain anymore. It felt like a thread. Delicate, but strong. I think... She hesitated. I think I'm starting to understand. Understand what? Why the bond chose us, she said quietly. Kalin's arm tightened around her just slightly. Yeah? Yeah, she whispered. They stayed like that until the sun rose fully. 2 people learning to trust. Learning to hope. Learning that maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to mean losing yourself. It could mean finding yourself. Together. The days that followed felt different. Softer somehow. Lyra found herself watching the path through the trees, listening for the sound of footsteps, waiting. She wasn't sure when it had happened. when the waiting had stopped feeling like dread and started feeling like anticipation. Kalin came every afternoon. Sometimes he brought firewood, sometimes herbs from the market. Once, he brought fresh bread still warm from the bakery in town. They didn't talk about the bond. Not directly, but it was there, always. A quiet presence between them. Lyra could feel it growing stronger. The pull wasn't sharp anymore. It had mellowed into something gentle, something that hummed softly in her chest whenever he was near. She tried not to think about it too much, tried to focus on the ordinary moments instead. The way he laughed when she told him stories about the forest, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. But at night, alone in her cottage, she couldn't ignore it. The mark on her wrist glowed faintly in the darkness, a reminder. A question she still hadn't answered. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Kalin arrived with a bundle of sage and lavender. Lyra smiled when she saw it. "You're getting good at this," she said. "I had a good teacher," he replied. They worked together in comfortable silence. Lyra tied the herbs into bundles. Kalin hung them from the rafters to dry. The cottage smelled like summer. When they finished, Lyra made tea. They sat by the fire. The flames cast flickering shadows across the walls. Kalin watched her quietly. She could feel his gaze. Warm, patient. "What?" she asked softly. "Nothing," he said. "Just, you look peaceful." Lyra glanced down at her cup. "I feel peaceful." "Good." She hesitated. Then she set the cup aside and looked at him. Really looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," Kalin said. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "The bond." "Do you feel it the same way I do?" His expression shifted. Something raw flickered across his face. "Yes," he said quietly. "What does it feel like for you?" Kalin leaned forward. His elbows rested on his knees. He stared into the fire. "It feels like coming home," he said slowly. "Like I've been walking in the cold for years, and suddenly there's warmth. Light." Lyra's breath caught. "It doesn't hurt," he continued. "Not anymore. At first it did, when you rejected me. It felt like something was being torn away." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," Kalin said. "You needed time. I understand that now." He turned to look at her. His eyes were steady, honest. "It's not a cage, Lyra," he said. "Not for me. It feels like possibility." She felt her throat tighten. "For me, too." Kalin's gaze softened. "Yeah?" "Yeah," she said. "I didn't think it would, but it does." She looked down at her wrist. The mark glowed faintly beneath her sleeve. She'd kept it hidden for so long, afraid of what it meant, what it demanded. But now, slowly she pulled back her sleeve. The crescent moon shimmered in the firelight, silver and luminous. Kalin's eyes widened slightly. "You're showing me." "I am," Lyra said softly. "Why now?" She swallowed. Her heart pounded. "Because I'm tired of being afraid." Kalin reached out slowly. His fingers hovered just above her wrist. He didn't touch. "Not yet." "May I?" he asked. Lyra nodded. His fingertips brushed the mark gently. The moment he touched it, warmth flooded through her. Not overwhelming, just present. "Steady." She gasped softly. "You feel that?" Kalin whispered. "Yes." He traced the edge of the crescent moon with his thumb. So careful. So tender. I have one too, he said. Lyra blinked. You do? Kalin nodded. He pushed up his own sleeve. There, on his inner wrist, was a matching mark. Silver and glowing. She stared at it, then at him. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't want to pressure you, Kalin said. I thought if you saw it, you'd feel trapped. Alara's chest ached. You were protecting me. Always, he said quietly. She reached out and touched his mark. The warmth flared again, stronger this time. She could feel his heartbeat through the bond. Steady and sure. It's pulling at me, she admitted. I feel it all the time now. I know, Kalin said. I feel it too. Does it scare you? He shook his head. No, not anymore. Why not? Because I trust you, he said simply. And I trust this. Alara's eyes burned. She blinked back the tears. I want to trust it too. You don't have to decide everything tonight, Kalin said gently. We can take this slow. I'm tired of slow, Alara whispered. Kalin's breath hitched. What are you saying? She looked at him, at the man who had been so patient, so kind, who had shown her that strength didn't have to mean control, that power didn't have to mean dominance. I'm saying, she took a shaky breath, I'm saying I feel it, the bond, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. Kalin's eyes searched hers. Alara. I don't want to run from this, she said. From you. I want to see where it leads. Are you sure? His voice was rough, hopeful. Yes, she whispered. Kalin closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they were bright, full of emotion. I don't deserve you, he said. You do, Alara said softly. You've proven it every day. He reached up and cupped her face gently. His thumb brushed her cheek. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it, he promised. Alara leaned into his touch. I believe you. The bond hummed between them. Warm and sure. No longer a chain, no longer a cage, just a thread connecting two hearts learning to trust. I'm still scared, she admitted. So am I, Kalin said. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it is. She smiled, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. Stay with me tonight, she said quietly. Just stay. Kalin's expression softened. I'd like that. They sat by the fire as the night deepened. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder. His arm wrapped around her. Steady. Safe. The marks on their wrists glowed softly in the darkness. Two crescents. Two halves of the same moon. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. The forest settled into sleep. Inside, two people held each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Alara closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt whole. Thank you, she whispered. For what? Kalin asked. For waiting. His arm tightened around her gently. I'd wait forever. She smiled against his shoulder. You don't have to. I know. They stayed like that through the night. The fire burned low. The stars wheeled overhead, and the bond between them grew stronger. not a force pulling them together, but a choice they made. Together. When dawn came, Alara woke to find Kalin still beside her, his breathing slow and steady, his warmth still wrapped around her. She looked at the mark on her wrist. It glowed softly in the pale light. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready. Alara woke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the cottage windows. Kalin was still there, his breathing slow and even. His arms still rested gently around her shoulders. She studied his face in the quiet morning light, the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark lashes rested against his cheeks. He looked peaceful, younger somehow without the weight of the crown pressing down on him. The mark on her wrist pulsed softly, warm, steady, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite her own. She wasn't afraid of it anymore. Kalin stirred. His eyes opened slowly. When he saw her watching him, he smiled. A small, genuine smile that made her chest tighten. "Morning," he said quietly. "Morning." They stayed like that for a moment, close, comfortable, neither of them rushing to break the spell of the quiet dawn. Finally, Alara shifted. She sat up slowly, careful not to disturb him too much. He let her go without hesitation, always giving her space, always respecting her choice. She moved to the window. Outside, the forest was waking. Birds called softly. The breeze rustled through the leaves. Everything felt calm. "Right. I've been thinking," she said. Kalin rose from the couch. He came to stand beside her. Close, but not crowding. "About what?" "About the bond," Lyra said. "About us." His expression grew careful, hopeful, but cautious. "And?" She turned to face him fully. "I want to accept it. The bond, but on my own terms." Kalin nodded slowly. "Tell me what that means to you." Alara took a breath. This was the hard part, the honest part. "It means I don't want to be your queen, because the bond says I should be. I want to choose it, consciously, fully." "I understand," Kalin said, "and I want us to be equals," she continued. "Not king and subject, not alpha and mate, just two people who choose each other. That's all I've ever wanted," Kalin said quietly. "From the moment I saw you, Alara, I didn't want someone who would follow me blindly. I wanted someone who would stand beside me, challenge me, see me as I am." Her throat tightened. "Even after I rejected you? In front of everyone?" "Especially after that," he said. A faint smile touched his lips. "You were brave. You stood up for yourself, for what you needed. That's the kind of strength I've always admired." Alara felt warmth spread through her chest. "I was terrified." "I know," Kalin said gently, "but you did it anyway." She looked down at her wrist. The mark glowed softly. "What happens now, if I accept the bond fully?" "Nothing you don't want," Kalin said. "The bond doesn't control us, Lyra. It connects us. But we decide what that connection looks like. So I won't lose myself?" "Never," he promised. "You're too strong for that. And I'll make sure of it. Every day." Lyra met his eyes. They were steady. "Sure." Full of quiet devotion. "I'm still going to be stubborn." Kalin laughed softly. "Good. And I'll need time," she added, "to adjust. To learn how to do this." "We have all the time you need," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She took a step closer. "Then I want to do this. I want to accept the bond. Not because I have to, but because I choose you." Kalin's breath caught. "Are you sure?" Yes, Alara whispered. I'm sure. For a moment, he just looked at her. His eyes searched hers. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. His fingers brushed hers gently, carefully. I need you to know something, he said. Before we do this. What? You have already changed me, Kalin said. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what courage means, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring that, honoring you. Ilara's eyes stung. Kalin, I don't want to be your king, he said. I just want to be yours. A tear slipped down her cheek. He reached up and brushed it away gently. His touch warm, steady. I want to be yours too, she said softly. The bond flared between them. Bright, warm, but not overwhelming. It felt like coming home, like finding something she hadn't known she was missing. Kalin lifted her hand. He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Then he turned her wrist gently and kissed the mark there. The crescent moon glowed beneath his lips. Ilara gasped softly. She felt the bond settle into place. Not a chain, not a cage, just a connection. Deep and true, and entirely theirs. She reached up and cupped his face. He leaned into her touch. His eyes closed briefly. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly. Yes, she whispered. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time, giving her the choice. And when his lips met hers, it was soft, tender, full of everything he couldn't say. Alara kissed him back. Her hand slid to his shoulders. His arms wrapped around her gently, holding her close, but not trapping her. The bond sang between them, warm and steady, a melody only they could hear. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Kalin rested his forehead against hers, his eyes still closed. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For giving me a chance, he said. For seeing me. Alara smiled. Thank you for waiting. Always, Kalin said. They stood there in the morning light, holding each other. Two people who had chosen to take a leap of faith. Together. Outside, the forest hummed with life. The sun climbed higher. The day stretched ahead of them, full of possibility. Alara looked at the mark on her wrist. It glowed softly, steady. She reached for Kalin's hand and turned his wrist over. His mark matched hers. Two crescents, two halves of the same whole. What now? She asked. Kalin laced his fingers through hers. Now we figure it out. Together. Together, she echoed. He smiled. Come back with me. To the pack. Not as my queen yet, just as yourself. Let them see who you are. Let them see us. Alara hesitated. They won't understand. Then we'll show them, Kalin said. We'll show them that love is a choice. That strength comes from trust. That two people can be equals, even when the world expects something different. She searched his face. You really believe that? I do, he said, because I believe in you. Ilara took a breath. She thought of her mother, of the fear that had driven her for so long. But she also thought of the man standing before her, the one who had been patient, who had listened, who had shown her that love didn't have to mean losing herself. Okay, she said. I'll come with you. Kalin's face lit up. You will? Yes, Alara said. But we do this my way. Slowly, honestly. Whatever you need, he promised. She squeezed his hand. Then let's go. They gathered her things together. Kalin helped her pack a small bag. He moved easily around her cottage now. Familiar, comfortable. Before they left, Alara paused at the door. She looked back at the small space that had been her refuge for so long. Kalin waited, patient as always. I'm not saying goodbye, she said quietly. Just see you later. You can come back any time, Kalin said. This is still yours. She nodded. Then she stepped outside. The morning air was cool, fresh. It smelled of earth and pine and new beginnings. Kalin took her hand. They walked together through the forest. The path was familiar, but everything felt different now. As they neared the edge of the woods, Alara saw the packland spread out before them. People moved about their morning routines. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in the distance. Her heart beat faster. They're going to stare. Let them, Kalin said. We have nothing to hide. Alara looked at him, at the quiet confidence in his eyes, the way he held her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. She took a breath. Okay, together. Together, Kalin said. They stepped out of the forest, into the light, into their future, and the bond between them glowed softly. A promise, a choice, a beginning.